Welcome to So Now What? I'm Ms. Jen Alexander. Our focus today is So Nature is Good for Health and Learning. Now what? Practical ideas for your trauma sensitive classroom. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guests today. We have two very special people with us. And the first person I want to introduce is Anna Paravano from California is joining us. She is an educator and author and a trauma-informed interior designer. Anna, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
You're welcome. We also have Hannah Tucson with us. She is an artist herself and an art teacher. Plus, she's a lover of nature. Hannah, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Let's just jump in and give folks an opportunity to get to know us a little bit better by thinking about this topic of nature just a bit. And I just lost the slides. Let's try this again. Okay. Let's jump in and talk a little bit about our topic, which is nature. I'm wondering if each of you can tell us a little bit more about yourself by telling us something in nature that tells us about you or about how you're doing. For instance, I think today I would pick a prairie coneflower, the purple coneflower with the orange center. You could see it in the photo there a little bit because I feel creative and colorful. Anna, would you like to share something from nature that goes with how you're doing or something that tells us something about you?
For some reason, I'm thinking about pine cones. Just the texture of them, the folding. It's been a time of kind of introspection for me this summer. And that's just all of the ins and outs of it, the rhythm of it. It's been an interesting time, and I just feel like a pine cone right now.
So layered, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Hannah, how about you?
I feel like when you just presented this topic, I was like, oh no, what am I gonna bring up? But I think I'm relating to moths a lot right now. And I just found on my door yesterday, it's called a cyclops moth. It's like a giant, it's like this big of a moth. And I feel like the reason I'm relating to those now is, and kind of what I'll talk about later, is one of the things I love about nature is that it's can seem fairly modest and like unnoticed a lot of the times, like we go by day and we can choose to not notice nature. And I think that moths kind of relate to that. But when you get, you zero in and you take time to notice, like you understand how special they are and nature is. So it's kind of what I'm leaning towards.
I love that. And I'm just gonna share that you have some new artwork out that centers moths too, which is incredible. I've been so excited watching the series get started, and it's so cool. So well done. To everyone who's joining us on YouTube, we're glad you're here as well. If you want to introduce yourself in the comments and share something in nature that goes with who you are or how you're doing, we would love to see that. The comments are a place where you can raise a question that this learning is sparking in you, or leave a comment about something that you're trying or want to try in your classroom. This show is a way for all of us to learn from one another. And I'm inviting you to join us in being relentless for school change together so that we can make our school classrooms and spaces good for each and every one of us. With that said, we like to do a little segment called Hats Off to You Educators. So if you brought a hat, great. If you didn't, that's okay too. But go ahead and take that out. And we're just going to do a little chair dancing here to our Hats Off to Educators song. hats off to you, educators. We are so excited to think of the difference that you are going to make in your classrooms and on your teams this school year. So let's get right to it and talk a bit about why is it important, Anna, for any educator working with any age of learner to really take a trauma-sensitive lens into how they set up their classrooms or other school spaces? Why is it so important?
Because environment matters. I mean, we just talked about nature and how that relates to where we are right now. An environment has been shown through research that how you feel about where you are impacts your ability to, how you feel about yourself, your ability to learn, your ability to participate, to feel safe or confident or calm. And being trauma sensitive means that you recognize that trauma is in the picture. Even if the kid just got yelled at that morning, I mean, maybe it wasn't a level 10 trauma, but for them, it shook up their world. It exists. It lives in that person, just like it lives in us. If somebody breaks too fast in front of us and we're kind of having a reaction to that, and it takes us a while to calm down, it happens. It's a part of who we are as people. And having that lens right now and bringing that into the classroom can create the container that we need, that our children need, to feel safe, to feel grounded, anchored in a space, to have those places that are their own and those spaces that are, joined in by the collective, to feel more comfortable, to feel more like they belong, and there's some consistency in their lives and some safety. This trauma sensitive lens really invites the whole person into the space and recognizes who they are and where they are.
I appreciate how you're talking about that. And it's really why you and I wrote a quick guide together about the importance of using a trauma sensitive lens and how we set up and co-create our spaces at school, because we're all experiencing big stress, right? Whether we're in a preschool classroom or we're an adolescent or we're an adult in the world experiencing all of these changes and really tough things that are impacting so many groups right now. And so what I hear you talking about is how these spaces that we can go into can be places where we connect with each other, but we also connect with and ground in self, creating that safety, that connection, that regulation and learning. It's so important. Thanks so much for talking about that with us. As we kind of think about that then, Anna, what might be some considerations using a trauma sensitive lens that an educator that works with any age level of learner might think about as they set up their classroom spaces or office spaces in a school?
Well, obviously it needs to be developmentally appropriate. It's going to be a range of things, right? And what a 6-year-old needs is maybe not what a 26-year-old needs in a classroom. But I'm just thinking about, having started in a new school a couple of years ago myself, that one of the issues I had walking in as an instructor is I felt like I had no place to land. That, I'm sharing a classroom space at a university with so many other people. And where's my stuff? Where do I put my things? Where's my cup of tea? Where's my chair? And of course, I'm older, but we can assume and think about each person walking into a space and going, where's my seat? Where's my stuff? Is it safe? Was it here from last night? Is it still here this morning? And the older you get and the more experience you have in school, maybe that changes. But then what if somebody just came to a new school? What do they need to see and what do they need to feel in that space? So thinking about it from that lens of what can I provide that creates a grounding spot for my students? What can I provide, like in their desk or in the reading area or in places to sit together as a group, or nap pads? How can I help to personalize or give them a sense of agency over that area? And I know that it can become like chaotic, because it's like there's 26 children and there's just me, and what am I going to do? But limited choices can be a good way to go. But also, I think being able to create some focal points for children so that when they're walking in, it's not too overwhelming. You know, and I'm going to go back to myself again. There was another teacher in the room who kind of possessed the room before I came in. And that stuff was everywhere. And it was like, okay, I need to make room for me in this. Going in with the approach that I know the child needs to make room for themselves, and how can I help them to do that, I think goes a long way to help everybody.
It's really making me reflect a bit. And Hannah, I'm wondering if this is happening for you too, because we've both taught in an elementary school, and you still do as an art teacher. And I think often as teachers, we think about our room as like my room, like it's my space or it's my office. And what I hear Anna talking about is that it's our space, and how do we co-create that with kids. And I'm just wondering if you have thoughts or reactions to that as a practicing teacher right now.
I definitely am like nodding my head at everything that you're saying, because even though I'm an art teacher, so like the kids that I have will be coming back to the art room and they're kind of familiar with the space. I'm thinking about, okay, do my students have a place that's their own in the art room? Like, do they know where to go? Do they know where to get supplies? How am I welcoming them back into my space? And even though I will be like I have them multiple years in a row, it's still like that first day, that first week, everybody's just, like stressed and a little bit on edge. Even if it's a space that they're familiar with, it's like, what can I do to ensure that when they walk into my room, they're going to feel that safety again? And so I like the idea of knowing where those gathering spaces are. I always have my like projector screen up with maybe a picture or a joke on it or something like that, which can kind of gravitate them in one direction to get everybody together. So
it's interesting because as you're talking about that and what you're both sharing, I'm thinking about predictability and how that creates safety. And we think of that in terms of our routines and our rhythms at school, but now we're talking about that in terms of the physical environment and what we see and what we experience and what we feel and how we move from place to place. And Hannah, you're already talking about areas where we come together as a group, as a community, and areas where there might be more independent work happening. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to guess that Anna's making some connections between what you put up on the board, whether it's image or a quote or a question or a joke, as being a potential focal point. And Anna, you mentioned focal points. So it's something we wrote about in the guide. Can you give just a quick explanation for folks who may not know what a focal point is and understanding? Just teach us that for a moment.
So the official definition is an enhanced point of interest in any environment. So, when you have a Christmas tree, that becomes your focal point usually, or any kind of holiday, seasonal sort of decoration. And in a classroom, the focal point, we tend to think about our blackboards, and not our blackboards, but our boards with, putting a bunch of stuff on it. An enhanced point of a focal point would be an enhanced area where the eye goes to and then rests. Because if the eye can rest, then the mind can calm down. It's focused on one point. And when what you were describing, Hannah, children coming back into the classroom and looking around and looking for, where's my desk and where's the other area, where are my supplies? What is, having that saying or having that picture is a reference point that everyone has in common now. We all see it, we all know it, and the benefit of that is tenfold because we can all talk about it. We can all refer to it. Now we have an icebreaker. But we also have a place where our eyes can land as we're looking around the room to see where everything is. Now we can go back to this. I think it's minimized the importance of the focal point because we want excitement. We want to engage, and we think that means more stuff. And really, sometimes it means one thing, some background, and then some stuff around. That's kind of the use of the focal point. I hope I don't know if I was clear or not, but there you go.
I think it explains it really well. And Anna, what I want to add to it that we wrote about is that too much stuff is a problem, right? Like, and I think in our classrooms for younger age learners, we need things. We need manipulatives. We need lots of materials and books and things that kids can get their hands on and get immersed in with learning. So that's important. And when it's all visible and it's all out, or there's so much stuff on the walls, it can make it really hard to focus. It can be overwhelming, even on a sensory level for kids, whether they've experienced big stress or not. On a sensory level, it can be too much for anyone. And for folks who have neurodivergence for any number of reasons, stress and trauma being one possible reason, then that can be even more difficult for them. And so if we're going to create a space that's our space for everyone, we have to be ready to meet the needs of our learners. And for, instructors, educators who work with older learners, teenagers, sometimes we have not enough. And I think in adult classrooms for adult learning, that can be the case as well. So we have to find that place that's just right for the group that we're working with, and to consider our own needs without centering them as most important at the same time. So let's kind of use that as a way to think about what does nature have to do with all of what we're talking about here in terms of a trauma-sensitive learning environment. Why is nature so important? Anna, how about you start?
Well, if we look at those pictures, we're already more relaxed. Okay, it's engaging in a whole different way than having a lot of bright colors thrown at you and shapes. This is nature we have found through research and science and observation and personal reflection, that it can lower your blood pressure, it can regulate your breathing. There's a study we quote in our guide. I think it's, well, I can't remember it exactly right now, but that children exposed to like a field of flowers or an open field for X amount of time will improve their productivity in a classroom by 20%. That's pretty good, and it tells you something about it. Having a window can mean so much. If it looks on a tree or a park or something open and green, that's not an accident that we feel more comfortable, we feel more at home. The use of light in nature is so important for growing all living things.
So we're talking about health benefits. At the same time, we're talking about stress recovery. And when you're talking about improved focus, that's important too, to think about how even a minute or less of access to visuals that go with nature can improve attention, but also be something that resets our upstairs brain, kind of clear our working memory. We have so much information coming at us all the time. We're bombarded through technology, through our learnings in schools too, and even the news. And so anything we can do to have moments of pause that help us ground and be in our body or experience the world and be connected to that can serve as a reset of sorts that then can boost not only cognition, but creativity too. And Hannah, I know nature's really important to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you incorporate nature either into your own life or into your world as a teacher?
Yeah, I feel like I'm totally relating again with, when Anna's talking about the focal point in the room is like a chance for a rest, and now we're looking at pictures of nature or just being within nature for a couple of minutes. Like I like seek out those opportunities because for me, I feel rest and calm and safe, like in those spaces, even if it is just looking at a picture. And I feel like I try to mimic that in like what I'm teaching with the students, but then also in my own work. And so initially it's the rest and the calm for me. But then like when I dig deeper and discover and be awed by nature and be like have this sense of wonder, like that's when it comes into what I like to do within my own art, and then also how I can incorporate that into my lessons with students. Like my lessons with students don't always focus on nature, but there's components that I can always bring in that will give that those same feelings so that they are able to first feel that rest and calm, and then be able to explore their creativity and their imagination through what they're going to do, because you're not able to be creative if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel calm. And so it's just like kind of fascinating how it all works together.
Yeah, I hear you talking about meaning making. Do you agree with that phrase as being part of what you're sharing about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that not only is it helping us regulate and be in our body, maybe feeling calm, not although not everyone might use that term, but some might. But we're talking about tapping into something kind of bigger around us, but also bigger ideas within us too. So with that in mind, let's explore a little bit. What are some ways to bring nature into the classroom, into school spaces? And why don't we start um, in thinking about its relation to a trauma sensitive school? I love this quote from Terry Tempest Williams. It goes like this: Finding beauty in a broken world is creating beauty in the world we find. I love that. That we can come in as we are and find beauty, and that can end up helping us change how we interact in the world itself. Powerful stuff. So let's think about our youngest learners. I have a couple of ideas, but Anna or Hannah, would one of you want to start with an idea of how can we kind of in a concrete way think about helping young learners, early childhood, for instance, connect with nature in the classroom?
One of the things I want to say about and related to this quote, it is definitely something that must be taught.
Mm.
I mean, as adults, I think we're used to working toward using nature to help us. I'm going to use the word regulate, because calm, it's like we're really not getting ready for a nap. We're getting ready to learn. We want to be in that regulated, calm, safe space. And part of trauma-informed design, and one of the tenets of it, is finding beauty, finding awe, because it shifts the brain, right? It detaches it from where it came from to, oh, look at what you're surrounded by. And so I have, watched my own child. I've never taught young children, but I've watched my own child who came from a more rural environment begin to discover leaves on the ground and the texture of it. And can you draw that? And for me, it reinforced the idea that you would take for granted as an adult, as an interior design practitioner and professor and all that kind of stuff, that beauty is assumed, nature is important. But to start from scratch and go, okay, this is what it is, and look at all the different colors and look at all the different veins, and can you draw those veins? So that was just my small experience with it.
So I relate that to how we can just help kids explore and be in the moment and notice whether they're drawing about it or speaking about it or just taking it in. I love how you're talking about that kind of reflective piece. Hannah, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just think, our littlest kids need more time outside. They need opportunities to actually be in nature or outside, and like all the time, as much as they can in all of the seasons. Not, I feel like a lot of our teachers are great about doing this, but it's always on the nice day. Like, oh, it's a nice day, we can go outside. And it's like, no, we need to be doing that all of the time. And, the kids will notice, like, well, I don't see any of the leaves anymore. Where did they go? How did they go? Like, it's becoming winter. What am I going to see now? And I also think that, like, in our youngest kids, I see a lot of collecting, so collecting different nature items. And I'm thinking about our playground at school. We have a nice big outdoor space, but we really don't have tons of trees and tons of plants, you know? So to me, sometimes when I look outside, it feels barren. But then I go outside and I see that literally at recess, kids have built with acorns and sticks and leaves. They've organized and sorted the acorns. They've written their letters with the acorns and the sticks. And it's, they just need the time and the freedom to be able to keep doing that, because I feel like we can only love nature when we know what it's about, and that's how we learn.
I love that. And there's so many connections we can make, even in the social emotional realm, to all these observations that you're both talking about, from how seasons change and our feelings change, or life circumstances change, and we have different reactions and responses to that. To talking about life, to talking about death, and how we come together and not only take care of the earth, but how can we take good care of one another and the earth too. Powerful things. Let's focus a little bit on bigger kids, and I'll start this time. One of my favorite activities to do with people of all ages, but think third grade on up, is to take in a collection of magazine cutouts of plants and flowers. And some of them are bright and bold and in their summer kind of bloom season. Others are in the winter or maybe dying. And to spread those all out and invite everyone to choose a photo that goes with something they've been feeling lately. And if they want to share about it with someone, they can, but they certainly don't have to. I wrote this up as an activity on the Equity Unbound website. So it's something that everyone can access, and I'll make sure that the link is available in my blog post for you that goes with this topic. But it's something that you can modify in lots of different ways for your group. Is there anything that either one of you want to add as you think about bigger kids and how we might bring nature into our work with them?
I feel like I'm thinking about your activity, and my idea is kind of the reverse of it. And so I've gone outside and done a photography project with older kids. And so it's basically finding their magazine image, but they're behind the lens of the camera. And so they really have to zero in on, you know, something outside that they think is special, that has a dynamic shape or pattern, you know, and I put a lot of different art elements with it. So it's not strictly, it's a little bit different than the one that you shared, which I think is great. But it's always fascinating to see just, you know, the world through their eyes, and specifically nature through their eyes, and how, you know, a class of students could all photograph your coneflower, and they're all going to be different.
Mm. What a powerful activity, and the agency that kids get to tap into. And then not only that, but then how we learn from one another's perspectives. Such important lessons. Anna, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, because I use nature pictures a lot, but I use them for body scans. How do you feel now? And then flashing the same picture, you know, everybody's looking at the same picture of a purple flower or of a pine tree or whatever it is. And then to do the body scan while they're looking at the different images of nature, engaging them in conversation about each one. How do you feel now? You know, we were looking at a red poppy, now you're looking at a green forest. What happened? How do you feel in your body? How is your breath? Did you feel a change in your heart rate? And then talking, because not everybody's comfortable with nature. You know, not everybody likes it. I remember one student saying, we did an ocean, you know, which a very calm body of water, right? And this student was like, I am petrified of this. Why are you petrified of the ocean? Because I almost drowned. Oh, and then we start this conversation, and it was a way not only for them to get in touch with how does nature affect my nervous system and my breathing, and how can I use it in a positive way, but what are the things that I try to avoid? And so we got to all know each other a whole lot better. They got to know themselves a whole lot better. And it gives you that insight of, we really need to be taught this. Just like you were saying, Hannah and Jen, it's repetition, it's exposure, because not everybody gets that exposure, right? And so that's how, one of the ways I use nature in the classroom.
And that again relates right to the regulation skills we might be working on, depending on the age level and developmental needs of the group we have, right? But that regulation is in the body. And so what a neat way to have an opportunity to tune into self and to notice what's coming up for me. What am I noticing some butterflies in my tummy, or am I noticing that I want to go towards it or away from it? And how those cues are so important in terms of how we trust self, but also how we can be our healthiest self too. A couple things I want to just add to that is one of the other things I love to encourage folks to do in a classroom is to use, whether it's a video or an image on the screen during transition time. So thinking maybe you've just come from a pep rally with your teens, or it was just outside recess or physical education class and everybody's kind of hyped up. You can ask them to check in with their bodies. What do you notice? Do you notice big energy moving around? Do you notice that you want to move a little bit? Well, let's do something. Since you just had an opportunity to move or to come into the space, let's do something now to help kind of settle what energy is left. And so to put maybe an ocean scene video up on the screen, that maybe it's to music, maybe it's not, but just to give folks an opportunity for a minute or so to transition and get their things out while watching that. It can be a still image though too, and then to check in and say, all right, what do you notice about your body now after we've done that, and how can you use that to inform decisions at other times in your life? Like, let's say you've just come from soccer practice and you're feeling really stirred up inside. Could you intentionally make a choice to find something in nature to look at to help regulate your body, to help take that energy and let it settle a bit? And that these are the practices that are trauma informed, that promote regulation and readiness for learning, that are good for all of us. And the more we do these in a moment by moment way, the healthier and more practiced we will be at it. Just want to check my notes here for a minute. Anna, I wanted to check with you, especially because you have experience teaching adults. Is there anything else you want to bring up that you've used to support adult learners that relates to nature?
Permission to say, I like this, I don't like this, I'm uncomfortable. I come from this culture, and in my culture, this is not done. Or a young man that had never seen the ocean before. I live in California, and this was a California native. Never had seen the ocean before. And you would assume certain things about people in your classroom, right? And what that means, and when you show an image that we all recognize, that it has some meaning for us, but it doesn't for everyone. And so as I deal with adults, people over 18, they have more ability to articulate usually what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and providing that space for them to just to accept and to say, yeah, what do you think about it now? Is that someplace you might want to go? And how does that, what do you relate to? Nature is a really big part of what we do in the projects that we create in the interior design program. We're always, how do we incorporate more green? How do we incorporate more light? How do we do this? How do we do that? And so it's interesting to stretch those boundaries inside of people's minds. And it really is repetition and learning and experiencing. And that's such an important thing. And it starts at a young age, but not everybody has that opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunities is what learning is all about, right?
Yeah, and the amazing things that the two of you are talking about, not, that these children, the children that you teach get to experience. When I get them as adults, not all of them had that. And it's like, what you have is so valuable to share, so cool.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the work that you're doing we didn't get to talk about that a whole lot in this conversation, but Anna is working with interior design students who are designing trauma-informed places and spaces. as projects in their courses from, well, why don't you talk about it a little bit? Some of the examples of things that your students are creating and how it really is a powerful way to impact community.
It is. It's rethinking public spaces. It's rethinking how we do residence. What is the person-centered solution, and how do we put trauma in the picture so that it's presumed when someone's walking into that space? How do we create that container for them? And so we've, this semester, these are graduating seniors from Cal State Northridge, and this semester we had women and children recovering from domestic violence. We had a prison where prisoners are transitioning into the regular, into the community. And so this would be the halfway residence for them, and how that was done, how we create now more openness, less restriction. We had one student rebrand a department store for neurodivergent children and their parents.
Cool.
Oh, it was amazing. And I just want to tell you one story about that. I'm so proud of her because her son is on the spectrum, and she's like, I'm looking everywhere for the furniture to fill these spaces. And I said, you know what? They don't exist because you haven't built it yet. Mm-hmm. And so her final project was all these unique and original shapes and sizes of things that she wished her son could have and she could have. So it's, that kind of thing.
Amazing.
It is amazing. And it's just the power of when we teach kids to tap into self like this and to know themselves and their needs and the people around them in their community and the nature around them right where they are, then how they have the freedom to create things that are good for all of us, right? It's what art and design is all about, and that we can design it for people and with people to meet folks' needs. Thank you for the work that both of you do to make our world more beautiful, to lead kids in that direction, and to do it in a trauma-informed way. Before we close out, I just want to get a chance for Hannah. I know you prepared something for us that you want to share with teachers that they can do with their groups, really at any time, but it's great for back to school. So go for it. What have you got?
Yeah. So I will share kind of this activity that I've thought of, but then I also have kind of just some follow-up nature-related art activities. I know that, it just kind of depends on the classroom teacher, how brave they are and comfortable with doing art-related things in the classroom, but this first activity is like a no-brainer. So I'm not sure what exactly to call this, but it's kind of like a classroom collection of nature. And so this is a great activity for the first day, the first week, coming back to school and getting to know each other, students getting to know each other, teachers getting to know their students, and keeping in mind that they haven't created that comfort and safety and sense of belonging with each other yet, but they're hoping to do that. And this activity is a way that maybe that can start to take shape. And so my idea is to go outside with your class, and each person collects one thing that they find is unique or special. It's going to take some hunting. It's going to take some investigating. Important to remind your students that you want to find what nature has given you, let's say. So not pulling leaves from trees or picking flowers, just the gifts that nature has already left, like on the ground, potentially. And even if you're in a space like I'm thinking about, if I did that at my school, would there be enough things for them to collect? There's always going to be enough stuff for them to collect. Like this is their specialty. And so Jen and I actually recently just did a similar activity, and there was a variety of things that had been provided, anything from stones to sticks to bark to pine cones, dried flowers, seed pods, like it really is anything. You do want to remind your students that it probably needs to be able to fit in their hand. Just because you'll have those that want to stretch the boundaries. And After the items have been collected, it would be good to gather outside, maybe in a circle, and have everyone share about the item that they collected. Why did they choose that? What drew them to that item? This is also a good opportunity for students to get to know each other and also take turns sharing and being respectful of the listener, and just kind of forming that dynamic of how maybe later in the year some like meeting is going to go with being showing respect to the speaker. So I thought about asking the question, what drew you to the object that you collected? And the end in mind there is that we're all unique in our perspective. So we all bring something unique to this class. And then have the students answer the question, so how do your individual objects work together? And so again, thinking about their class as kind of like a family, how do our individual objects now come together and they all work together? Which then leads into hopefully asking the class, discussing with the class, what is a way that we can make an art piece with the objects that we've created that can be displayed in our room throughout the year? And so hopefully the kids will have a bunch of amazing ideas, because they always do. And just a couple ideas that I had thought of are maybe making a mandala. This is something they could do outside. They're already sitting in a circle. Everybody adds their item to create a mandala or just an art piece. You know, when I think of a mandala, I think of something that has a center point and then it's radiated out. But depending on the objects that they collected, it might not work in that fashion, but that's fine. It's all about them putting their individual objects together. Other ideas would be maybe creating a sculpture with their items, and then kind of giving the example of what happens if I take one of the items away. Well, it's going to affect the whole sculpture, just like each student in the class is a very valuable piece to the class's puzzle. And then this is something I do. I create these nature jars, kind of hold it up here. So what they create, I know it's kind of reflective, but I've got rocks and seed pods and feathers and different things in there. I create those myself, but that could be something easy that they could do with their items and display in the classroom. And then finally, I had thought about this. I'm sharing this too. This is like a story string. They're like, have you guys heard of those before? It's kind of like cultures will do kind of series of knots on strings to tell stories. But this is kind of the story of their class. And so I like the idea that maybe that story string with their objects tied on could be added to throughout the year, or like with seasons changing, or, different events that are happening together in the classroom. So that's kind of the idea of that one, but really just creating something visual with their individual objects that they can reference and is visible in the classroom throughout the year.
I'm excited as an adult to think about participating in that. And I think any student of any age in their own way could be part of that. And it's just so powerful to think about how they're making choices and using their imagination, but also grounding in self and sharing that with one another as that community in the classroom is being built, and how that lays a foundation for all the learning we're going to do together, how we're going to be changed by each other, how what we create and come together to be is better than any of us could have been on our own. And that's really the power of learning and the power of a new year. It's since I've moved to this role of working with teachers full time, I love it so much because I get to be part of creating those relationships and connections with other educators, and there's nothing better. And if there's one time of year when I miss the most of being with kids and in a school, it's that back to school time, that creating that community and everyone is coming in with some degree of new because it's different. Even if you were in some of these spaces last year, it's still different, and you're different. You're not the same person as an adult or as a learner when you left the building. And so how do we recreate these connections and these opportunities to grow together? It's just, there's just gives me goosebumps even just thinking about it. And Hannah, your ideas are just fantastic. And I think there's so many educators who can take that and tweak it to make it their own or to fit their unique needs, or even to tie it into the curriculum work that they're going to do and the content they're going to cover this year. So powerful for learning.
And sorry to interrupt you, but one thing I will add, I don't know if I said it at the beginning, but I like the fact that there's not any drawing involved, drawing or painting or actually making an individual piece of art, because I think that can be kind of scary at the beginning of the year. We're not used to yet our classmates, and sometimes that can also be scary for the teacher to tackle right away. And we need to like that is also valuable because everybody needs to be comfortable in the situation. But as the year goes on, if this is something that a class really kind of latches onto, I have some other activities that they could do with their nature items. Is it okay if I share some of those ideas?
Please.
Okay. So they could, this is like, once the foundation is set and you're feeling like, okay, I can make some individual art now, you can trace the objects. You could trace the object shadows is kind of an important one. And it's not too, I don't know, sometimes when you ask kids to draw things from nature, sometimes they love it. Sometimes they're immediately like, I can't do this. It's too hard. And that's never like how you want an activity like that to go. I've also actually used the nature items as drawing tools, like as natural paintbrushes. And so we've actually have one right here. Maybe I can show this. So we've got some little twigs, yarn and tape on a stick for a little paintbrush. But then it's fun to try out those natural brushes because they really don't work perfectly. And so it's a great lesson in like, hey, let's just all try this together and kind of see what happens. It's so fun to actually paint with items from nature. And another activity that I love to do is something called automatic drawing. Maybe you guys have heard of this before. It can also be called, I've also heard it called neurographic art. So it's basically going out in nature, you close your eyes and you have a pencil and paper and you just let your hand move as you're hearing sounds from nature, and you're out like feeling the breeze or whatever it is. And then opening your eyes after maybe 30 seconds of kind of a doodle and seeing if your picture actually reveals something that you were thinking about. So it's kind of that's also a fun and easy one to do for any classroom teacher, I think, because again, it's going to be non-objective, mostly abstract, which we want to keep everybody comfortable. So those are just a few different ideas.
There's so much here. There's just so much power in nature and so many great ideas that you've shared. Anna, is there anything you want to add to this part of the conversation?
Yeah, real quick to what Hannah was talking about with getting the objects from nature. I've done this with older students where we get the object, pick an object from nature and then reproduce all the colors you see.
Oh, yeah, love that.
In that object. And we did it at the beginning of the term and at the end of the term, and it was totally different. It is just, and then they see, oh, wow, I see better, because we do a lot of exercises in between, right, on color and perception and, that kind of thing. And that was one of everybody's favorites because they got to see how they changed and grew. Anyway, who knew a shell had that many colors in it, or a rock or a feather,
I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah, I love it. And all the senses that are tapped into this is just such good stuff that's good for our nervous systems, good for our brains, good for learning, good for relationships. What a treat to get to talk with both of you, to hear about the things you're doing with your learners, the ideas that you have for other educators. I know folks are going to listen to this and think, okay, I can do that. I want to try that. And then who knows what they'll think of and dream up and use from there, how we all just learn from one another in this journey. So as we kind of close out and head towards closing out, I want to share a quote that I know Hannah is going to be familiar with because it comes from the nature quest that she and I have been on this summer, where I first heard this quote from Mary Oliver. I wish I would have heard it sooner and I hadn't, but it's just so powerful for me that we need to pay attention, be astounded, and tell about it. Pay attention, be astounded, tell about it, and how nature can be one pathway that takes us there. And for kids to be able to tap into their power, what astounds them, what leaves them in awe, what they have the power to create, is going to be good for all of us in community as we move forward together. And with that, I have a few things I want to highlight as some of my favorite things for this work that relate to this topic. And so the first one is the quick guide that Anna and I wrote. So if you love these ideas about nature, know that there's so much more that she and I wrote about together in our quick guide called Creating a Regulating Classroom Environment. It's really what you as a classroom teacher of any age group need to know so that when you're setting up your classroom, you're setting everybody up for success, not only to tap into nature, but how do you set up a focal point? What really goes into that? What do you think about? How can you use color in a way that's more regulating? Not necessarily that is your preference and what you like, but that's good for people's nervous systems and so much more. Plus, there are downloads that come with it to help you do some of this work even with your kids. That's one of my favorite things. The other one I want to highlight is a book by Philip Ball called Patterns in Nature. And this is just one option. I love this book so much. It's like a coffee table book, and it has just beautiful photographs in it, patterns that occur in nature, just all different kinds of examples. Here's another one of insects. First one was cacti. But I love encouraging teachers to put books like this in your reading center or in a get regulated area, if you have one of those in your classroom, or just have it available for students who need a moment just to be, or to think about how to regulate their bodies, and that looking at things like this can be regulating. My other favorite place to encourage all educators to put options like this is in any area where people wait for a meeting. So think where you have your IEP meetings, where you might have conversations with families about tough stuff that comes up during the school year. Put books like this in the waiting area. So when people have a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety, they have something to do and to look at, and that what's available could potentially be helpful to them and their nervous systems too. And the last thing I want to highlight is plants. We didn't even talk much about plants, but of course, bringing plants into the classroom is one way to tap into nature. And one of my favorite plants to use in the classroom is a spider plant. They're easy to grow. They can even do well in pretty low light. And what's great is they propagate. And so as they get bigger, they'll have these little clumps like an air plant at the end. And you can even give those to students, replant them, share them with other people in your school. It's just a neat way to bring nature into the classroom, but also in a way that you and your learners can take care of those plants together and then even share them, all as a metaphor, but also just a way of being in community together too. Anna or Hannah, do you have any favorite things that we haven't talked about yet that you would like to share?
Well, I was just going to add about the spider plants that I just saw that they also I mean, I know all plants do this to an extent, but like cleanse the air like of toxins and stuff. But I think spider plants are like really amazing at it.
Yes, I
So
think you're right about that. Another good reason to pick that one for your classroom for sure.
One of the things I was thinking about when you were showing the book of Patterns in Nature, which is another way to bring nature in, is texture, the texture that is available on the seating that you have. Things that are furrier, things that are more welcoming versus hard plastics, and how the body really responds to that. So it's another way of using nature that isn't like a tree, but it is part of the natural world that I feel like our pets and the animal world is there for us to help us in so many ways as we help them. But yeah, what are you sitting on? What do you have near you? Are there textures that are reminiscent of comfort and familiarity and friends that we have at home?
I worked with a group in Illinois in their school, and in the library they had a texture wall. It was just
Oh,
something that teachers had made, and it didn't necessarily include things from nature on it, but different fabrics and different pieces of things that had different textures. And kids were encouraged to touch it on their way in or out, as a sensory kind of break as they were transitioning. But you totally could bring pieces of nature into something like that and have different textures that are literally from natural things too. Such good ideas. What a fun conversation this has been, and it really makes me think about like going for a walk right now, which is something I love to do really any day, and even as I travel and work with groups of folks. But just to take it in. So I hope that each of you gets an opportunity to do something out in nature even yet today. And for those who are watching on YouTube or another place, or even listening to our podcast of this episode, I hope you are able to tap into an experience with nature very soon as well. I'll be posting a blog post the same day that this is going live. It's at msjenalexander.com. It will include some information about the benefits of nature, and several of the ideas we've talked about are there, but there will be some other ones too. Plus, if you really kind of liked that plant activity that I shared at the beginning with the magazines, there's an adapted version of that on the blog post that gives some instructions of how you could do that with young learners. Plus, there's a link to the lesson plan for free of the lesson that I talked about with for older kids too. Now what? If you have listened to our work and our conversation here today, you might be thinking, what do I do with all this now? We encourage you to pick one thing that you've heard that you want to use as is or adapt in your classroom or school space, and then learn more when you're ready. Read our quick guide, go to the blog post, see what else you might want to try after that, and then share this show with another educator, because we're all working together here and can learn from one another. And we welcome more and more folks to join the community that we're creating here. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here for this conversation. Anna, Hannah, you're doing amazing work, and I know you have some big things coming up with new groups of students here yet this month, and I'll be doing tons of back to school PD coming up too. So the best to both of you, to all of us, to all the educators who are heading back to school, please take good care and know that we are rooting for you, and we're proud of you in the difference that you're going to make this year. As we close out, I always like to come back to one word. So if you could think of one word that goes with our conversation, Anna, I want you to share. Hannah, I want you to share. People can put their words in the comments when they've watched the show. My word is moth. And so it's just fascinating that you talked about moths, Hannah, because I was already thinking of moths, in part because of your art and my appreciation for it, but thinking about, for me, how moths, and I know you've thought about this too in your work, of how moths go towards the light. They come out in the dark and then go towards the light. And that is something that has really hit me in a deep place, both personally and in this work of trauma-informed education. And so moth is my word. And it reminds me of both of you, because you're part of the light in this world. And I'm just so touched to be connected to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And for the work that you do, the word that comes to my mind is growth. Post-traumatic growth is the phrase I'm thinking about, because we can all start wherever we start, but it's where we end up that counts.
Yeah. I love it.
I feel like I'm thinking of rest. I can't stop thinking about it ever since Anna said that. And I'm like, in regards to my classroom, in regards to my life, in regards to nature, like I feel like I'm going to go forward with rest in mind. And it just like feels good that I think it's going to impact a lot, even though it seems like really simple. And I know that, like, Anna, you never meant for that to be what I latched onto, but I did.
The truth of it, like, okay, I said
We
that.
we latch onto what
Okay.
we need, right? And what hits us and has meaning for us. And that's the power of this work and of being able to show up who we are as we are and have the safety with each other to show that as much as we're ready to. So thank you both again so much for being here. And thank you to our watchers, our listeners, educators who are making a difference. You can always learn more on my website, msjenalexander.com. Please follow me and us on all of the sites and check out Hannah's artwork at Wild Sky Studio. She's amazing. And Anna, please keep us updated on your growing at home projects and how you are making a difference with your students in interior design too.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you all so much. Thank you and take good care.